Welcome, everyone, to the Heal Yourself, Heal the Earth Global Online Conference. I am your host, Monique, and today I feel so honored because we have Cuauhtemoc Vija speaking with us. Now, Cuauhtemoc is a sustainable farmer based in Oregon, and in between harvests, he provides microbial and biochar education for agriculture and conservation groups, both domestically and internationally. He has worked with the Sonoma Biochar Initiative, Sonoma Ecology Center, and many schools. The inspirational documentary, Microbe Power, available on YouTube, features Cuauhtemoc and captures the transformation of water, ecology, and people using regenerative practices. Cuauhtemoc's main passion is to share his information with you about sustainable development, and his teachings are also available through Matt Power's course, the Advanced Permaculture Student Online. So welcome, Cuauhtemoc. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I love the title of your talk, which is, As the Plants Grow, So Will the Farmer. That's great.
This is true. When it's done right, this happens.
Fantastic. I wonder if we could start out with you just sharing a little bit about your own journey and how you came to be working so closely with the microorganisms in the soil.
Yeah, so not a direct path to where I am today. I was an electrician, and before that, kind of a roughneck street kid. So, kind of a dodgy kind of a past, kind of got solid with my work as an electrician, but I was injured on the job in '97, and I was electrocuted.
Oh, gosh.
And yeah, so if you look at my hand, you can see the burns are still there on my hand.
Okay,
But
yeah.
this actually was the best day of my life because it slowed me down. And for years, I had relied on my brute strength I played football for years, wrestled, but for years I relied on physical strength. But now without my right hand, which I was right hand dominant, I had to slow life down. And it made me look at things differently. And because of that, I stumbled into the path of agriculture. So in '97, my baby sister, brought home her boyfriend, and you do what all good brothers do, and you find out who this guy is. And as I was questioning this fella, he was one of the first 4 people to bring EM, effective microbes, to the United States. He had just left the school in Costa Rica, Earth University, where this is still taught today. And he had started talking to me about cultivation. And at the time I was growing, but doing traditional farming, the NPK farming. And he had brought the attention that there were microbes in the soil. Nobody was talking about this at the time in '97. And he was able to put it to me that if I fed these little invisible microbes and took care of the microbes, they would provide all the NPK I needed. So that was really...
Sorry, so NPK, just so everyone knows.
Traditional chemistry in which we feed plants. The 3 numbers there are associated with the feeding of the plant. So when I refer to NPK, it's referred to the traditional conventional agricultural feeding method that's taught in most universities today. But in '97, the young man had turned me the opposite way and had me look at the microbial aspect of the soil that provides all of the food essentially for all living plants. So that was a big eye opener for me.
Wow.
And yeah, so he was trying to bring EM, effective microbes, to the United States. And a lot of people, as I said, did not even know what a microbe was. So a lot of his early promotion of this product was education. So I asked him if I can help him make what's called bokashi, and it's a fermented organic matter utilizing these microbes to then make things available to the soil and then make those organisms then provide for the plants. So I took an internship with him making what's called bokashi, and that was real exciting. But one day he brought in the bioceramic bag, which is a byproduct from the microbes. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but when he had showed that to me and what it does, it really was Pandora's box for me to really understand that there's things we can see like the microbes, but there's other things we cannot see like electromagnetic frequencies that are directly related to microorganisms and to their behavior, which almost seems to be a catalyst of rejuvenation. So when I saw him do a simple trick with the bioceramics, it was just, that was it. I was locked on, and I have been since, with the same passion as back then to try to understand what it is that creates these regenerative frequencies and how to continue to nurture them for our planet and ourselves.
Yes, that's amazing.
My baby sister's boyfriend was the one who got me this stuff.
Wow, well done to him.
Yeah. Growing oranges down in Valencia, California, the best oranges you ever seen.
Oh, wow.
So, he became a paralegal, just about to get his degree as a lawyer for ag. So brilliant young man, and still going to serve our community beyond the microbial side. He's now moving into a different framework to then push these ideas even further along through the proper agencies for advancement.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because so there you were, a normal farmer using chemicals, right? So nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, I think, using the fertilizers. But then this man comes and tells you that if you feed the soil, you don't need any of that. And in fact, those fertilizers and things are actually harming the microbes, aren't they?
Yeah, essentially that's what they're doing, and they're killing them off. And that's why conventional ag, the fields over time deplete, and these are what we call degenerative practices.
Exactly.
With your own biosystem, when you consume these foods that are not so good, you deplete your own biosphere as well. So a lot of these things you'll begin to hear as I talk about the soil. You'll begin to think of your own biota and how these foods affect us and put us in a position to thrive if we consume the right foods.
Right. So that's what I say to people. Just as you have your own microbiome in your gut, the soil, and that needs to be balanced. The soil is full of microbes, and that needs to be balanced. And all these chemicals are killing them off. And then you have to buy more chemicals and more chemicals. So that's the degenerative. We're not going there. We're going towards the regeneration of soil. And we hear about desertification and the degradation of soils, and we only have topsoil left for 50 years. But with these microbes, when you use them correctly, we can regenerate the soil, right? There's nothing to stop us.
Yeah, they are very important players at this time for soil building. And they work day and night as rejuvenators of the soil without asking for payment, any kind of salary, 401k, just a pleasure to be in the soil. So these are the type of employers that you need to build a sustainable planet. I haven't found anything else, so we'd be talking about that. But as we look at the areas of the planet that are the healthiest, it's in the spoonful of this soil where we can find millions and millions of microorganisms that are setting the stage for regeneration. And we know that this happens in the environment, but now the physicians are now lining up that this happens within your own biota as well, with our body containing 10 times more microbials than blood cells. So you can see how important it is to nurture these things inside and out to then create and set the stage for our own place to thrive, if you will.
Right, because the plants that are grown in this healthy soil, they're bound to be full of extra nutrients and better for you, rather than eating a kind of, factory farmed vegetable that's been raised on chemicals. And then it's kind of the vibration of that food inside your body. It's not like life-giving, is it? I mean,
they say food is like medicine, and it's true because these microbes, these fungi, wrap around the root systems of the plant and then mine nutrients and water and bring it back to the host of the plant, which then it brings it up into the canopy, which is the fruit. And now we're looking at certain kinds of fruit, not just organically, but their nutrient density. how much nutrients are packed into that. And that's really separating the value of that food, because you have to eat less of it. It has more antioxidants for you, and it really becomes a holistic medicine when you can get all of these beautiful terpenes, which are essentially a precursor for other medicines within the body to set the healing stage. And then you have all of these beautiful colors which have their own chemistry within them. They are enhanced by these relationships with the soil, and accessing that beautiful soil into the plant is really what it's about now. And we're looking at crops differently now with the nutrient density capacity to look at what's the difference of this banana compared to this banana, and why are they different. Yeah. So
have there been studies to prove the nutrient density of fruits and veg grown in these healthy soils?
Yeah, that's like really the cutting edge thing, because as we market our produce, we want to try to give the customer the best value at purchasing, and really essentially voting with their dollar. Every time you buy something, you're essentially voting, and you're giving that farmer access to continue to create more foods. But those are the kind of things where we're hoping help you make the vote to choose this tomato or this banana over the other banana because of those nutrient density testing. And a lot of people, you'll see that you don't want a nutrient density testing if you're not doing those things in the soil, because it's not going to relate. But if you are doing the right management, it shows in the fruit, and you want your customers to know that so they can make the best choices for their health. And
right.
It's going to be, it's growing more and more every day, but you'll see that, and especially in some of the final co-ops where they are doing nutrient density testing, bricks testing on those fruits, so we can see exactly how much of those nutrients are in there.
Wow, this is just fantastic. I just love this so much. And when I learned about this, it just blew my mind. And I was so excited because we can regenerate the soil. We can grow healthy food and make ourselves healthier and get more in relationship with the land, get back to those old ways. So let's go back to the microorganisms themselves. What are your favorites to work with? You mentioned EM, effective microorganisms. Where do they come from? How do we get them into our soil?
EM is essentially food-grade microbes, and they're a class of 3 basic microbes. And the first one is going to be lactic acid bacteria that we know from pickling and olives. If we think about pickles and olives, they can sit in a brine for a long period of time, suspended in state without pathogens coming to decompose them or rot the food. They're excellent at keeping pathogens away, these lactic acid bacteria. So that's why we employ them in the consortia EM, because they keep things away. They're clean freaks, essentially. Then we have yeast, which we know from beer, wine, and breads. We use the yeast because yeast can consume organic matter so fast, so it makes a lot of things available very quick. So as it's tearing through things, making things available, they gotta have something there to clean up after it, kind of like having your mom around, keep things clean because they're so messy. So that's why the labs are partnered with the yeast, who can decompose a lot of organic matter. But the third microbe is going to be PNSB, purple non-sulfur bacteria. And we know this bacteria from the edges of ponds, and it lives in the belly of the worm. But we know it from the food industry because it's used for Swiss cheese. And as it consumes CO2, think about that, consume CO2. We have a big CO2 problem nowadays. It releases oxygen back to the planet. It's able to feed 4 different ways. It can feed from light, it can feed from carbo, it can feed from chemistry, and it can feed from heat. So being able to feed 4 different ways and make oxygen, consuming CO2, is probably one of the first planet builders that came here, because this was a toxic environment, heat, CO2, but this PNSB was very happy here. And it would eat all of these compounds, which is usually toxic to an environment, and release amino acids, folic acids, and oxygen, making it favorable for other microbes to come here. And I think that's kind of how this planet kind of kicked off. So when I'm using these EMs and I'm putting them into an environment which may have toxins, like in the early days of the planet, PNSB comes in, takes care of all those compounds, repositions them for the other microbials that come in and do their thing. Now, it's not that these free microbes come into an area and take over. And this is what really like blew my mind as I started to study the EM. And it really set a business principle for me. Because what we looked at was in Costa Rica, when they studied the soil, you couldn't find these free microbes anywhere. And they've been using them 15 years. And you're like, every week we use these. Where'd they go? What happened? Baffled everybody. But the truth is, these microbes, they don't come to take over. They're really a catalyst for what we call IMO, indigenous microorganisms, that already live there. Because maybe the indigenous microorganisms depleted. EM comes, feeds them, retrains them, builds them up again, so they have the confidence to build their area back up. That's why we don't see the EM. As I was bringing this business and this education to all these places, people want you to come in and work and do this and that. But my goal was not to take over that project, but to train those already established in that organization, in that community, because it would be more effective than me trying to come in there and trying to start this up again. So that's why the education is so important. And I love to teach people because you'll know your community better than me. All you need are the pieces of the puzzle to then kick this thing off. So EM at the microbial level, people can learn a lot from microbes. And what we know about microbes is very little. You know, we know probably, there's very little we know about the microbial community. You know, 10% of all the microbials we probably know about. But what we know is, you know, there's some good ones and there's some bad ones, but there's also some opportunistic ones. And what this means is we study microbes sometimes and they act pathogenic, but then we see the same colonies acting rejuvenative. What happens is they follow who's the leader. If you have regenerative microbes in place, then the catalyst, the 90% of the others, follow who's leading. If you have bad microbes in place, then they follow those behavior patterns. People seem to be the same way. Whatever they're following is how they're going to push their behaviors. So it's important that we partner up with people and things that are regenerative at this time, because it's a catalyst for our own thinking, for our own behaviors. And that's what this planet needs now, is really that whole push in motion and swing that puts us in that sacred web and not away from that web and participating. And people don't know how to participate. That's the best way, is small. Doing something small, like with the microbes, is really doing something big and much easier than taking on City Hall or all these other tough challenges. Start small. Start with your compost bin. Start with your garden. Start with the community garden, school gardens. And you'll be so happy at that point that you'll be nonstop. And you'll be the next one in this interview table telling us what you're doing. Yes,
that's so beautiful. I love that. So there was so much in that. I love the whole working within the sacred web, starting small, doing a garden. I just recently started a garden at my former workplace, and it really did something to me. I mean, it like rewilds you, I think, because you're in connection. You're I don't know, you're so like every day I'd run outside to check on the plants. I was more interested in that than my work. And there was a bee, or my first little critter that came. I was so excited, and it gets you in sync with the cycles, and you plant seeds and then you see them sprout and you're nurturing it. And then I know they've harvested some zucchini from what I planted, and it's taken off. So I totally agree. So so how could someone get started? So let's say they're just starting a garden, and now they've learned there's EM, which trains IMOs. They sound intelligent to me. Do you think they're like conscious? They must be.
Well, judging from their past work of this planet, I think that they have a pretty good system down. And this we're not the only ones with cellular communication. These things have they have intercellular communication where they communicate and talk to each other. And we're learning microbiology that they have a communication. They each have their own language, And I think that's what makes the EM so important. Because when we use the EM, we're using those indigenous microbes, but we're doing the IMO. Then the indigenous microbes and the EM, the effective microbes, are both together. So this allows them to communicate and talk. And when they can communicate and talk, when we put them into the environment, then they already have all those issues worked out before they have to go to work. So it's like a briefing meeting, if you would, a getting to know each other party. And then they have a greater chance of getting the work done with all the different languages and all the different characteristics. And just like people, we see someone different, we freak out, right? Maybe they got too much beadwork or their hair's a different color, and they may have all the information we need to help us advance, but because they on the surface look different, we are avoiding those conversations that we need to push forward. So microbes are the same. They have to get over those hiccups as well. And bokashi and bokashi balls are a great way for them to do this.
That's amazing. Because, you hear that nature is competitive. But a garden isn't competitive. There's cooperation there. Everything's, the fungi and the microbes, they're all helping each other and working it out, as you say. So that's amazing.
Yeah, the competition is really between those who participate and those who don't. But the competition is not so much about those who work together. So, when we think about that competitive part of it, in microbials, and this is what we like the regenerative microbes so much, they actually go through what's called a competitive exclusion process. And even like your own human body has microbials that, they're called super germs, but they stay dormant in your armpit or in your nose until your microbiome becomes so weak that they think they have a chance to make a break for it. And then the staph and things like that come out, But with competitive exclusion, they're usually kept at bay because your lactic acid bacteria, all your other bacteria are so strong, they will never thrive within the host, the person, unless the person becomes sick. And then that's when these pathogens come out within the people. But they're always on you. The environment's the same thing. If we can keep the garden healthy, regenerative, then most of the time these pathogens, which you can never get rid of them. They're there, but they stay dormant. And this is the regenerative microbes working together to keep the pathogens at bay. That's what I see as the competition. So the more regenerative we become, the more we work together, the harder it is for those things that are trying to keep things not together or in the web to slow it down.
And that's beautiful. Thank you for that clarification. And I can see that on the macro level with people. Yeah. So how can someone get started with these effective microorganisms? How can they bring them in to their soil? What should they do?
My gateway to microbes was the bokashi bucket.
Okay.
The bokashi bucket is a little 5-gallon bucket. You can even just use a normal bucket if you want. But the trick is to get all your compost, all your food waste, put it in that bucket, but add the bokashi, which is fermented organic matter with the good microbes on it. So when you add the bokashi to your food waste, usually food spoils and rots. But if we can take it down a regenerative path, it ferments and makes it bioavailable. So with the bokashi bucket, what happens is I'm able to trap what I'm eating. But for me, what really happened was, because I want to grow the best plants, I started to notice what I was throwing away. And if I was eating foods that were not so good, but yet I want to try to compost, it was like a mirror, like, golly, you've been eating this, that, and the other thing for 3 days now. That's not how you're going to grow good tomatoes. Let's get some fruit in you now. And then the scraps from the fruit and the waste would go in the bokashi bucket. And then my bokashi bucket got better. But I didn't realize, I'm starting to eat better too. So looking at what we're throwing away and with the intention of growing the best garden and being able to utilize this, really for me was like, I was able every day to watch the power of the microbes ferment stuff up. And at the bottom of the bokashi bucket is a little spigot where you can collect the juice from what you eat. So as it ferments in the bucket, the juices come out the bottom. You water your plants at about a tablespoon per gallon. The waste coming from your bokashi bucket. And that's the plants all of a sudden waking up from all the byproducts from the fermentation of what you're eating, that you really begin to relate, like, the plants I've never seen them look this healthy. well, is it what they're eating? Now, what about me? What if I eat like that too? And then you start to realize they're vibrating different. That's why the flowers are different. The food made them vibrate different. And I'm the same way now. I'm not the way I'm tired like I was. So the bucket was really a way for me to instantly see the results and use the results on my garden while slowing down the buying nutrients for the garden and buying this and that and the other thing. I was throwing away all these things, I realized. Time to clean the fridge, it really was time to collect nutrients for the garden, you know. So these kind of, when you looked at waste, you then realize this is not waste at all. This is the beginning of the magic, actually. And this then allows you to then look at all waste that way. And as I got nuttier and needed bigger projects besides my own garden, and this is going to happen to you, you go to school gardens and community gardens. At the school garden, with the kids throwing away 50 pounds of food, and you know, kids throw away the vegetables first, right? They eat the cookies and they throw it. I was able to regenerate the school gardens from the waste of the cafeteria, and the gardens grew as beautiful as they ever did. The parent club who was paying never bought a lick of soil, and they started to ask questions. How is this happening? What are you doing out here? So you're able to now look at waste streamline as a resource to put back into the community to then build education projects. And this is really what it's about. And then from there, we got beer waste to make the bokashi from the local beer guy who's throwing it away. Farmers market day, they would pop kettle corn. The stuff that fell on the floor, I'd leave a 55-gallon bucket for the man to sweep up. I'd make bokashi from kettle corn waste. So you begin to see waste material as a nutritional value for plants and a house for microbes that the rest is history.
Wow. So how long does it take in this bucket? And are these buckets available widely? I mean, are they easy to obtain?
Very easy to obtain. Once your food has been fermented, 2 weeks is all it takes to ferment your food. Go out in the garden, empty out the contents into a hole in the garden, cover it up. 2 more weeks after that, you can plant on top of that what you just threw out. So literally in 4 weeks, you can begin to start garden beds, planting right on top that are not going to need any type of fertilizer because all the nutrition is underneath in the soil and fermented and bioavailable, that the plants use it immediately. You will not believe what your plants are going to look like when they're nutritionally kept up from day one. That like I said, it sparks something in you. You find a meaning in life. And like I said, this wasn't my meaning. You know, I had a whole different field going on. But when I realized that, my goodness, this is it for me. I love this thing. You take it and run and do your best work.
That's fantastic. That's so beautiful. I can just imagine people thinking, does it smell bad? You know, with this fermenting thing, is this going to stink in my kitchen? Is this, if I put it in a hole in the ground, are animals going to be attracted to it? So can you just address that?
Yeah, and that's really what begins that whole Pandora's box, because you realize, why does all this garbage smell good and sweet? It's fermenting. So if you have fruit, the aromas from fermentation actually bring a different expression of the terpenes, the smell, which are actually more medicinal than the original going in. So it begins to be very thought-provoking as you smell the different aromas from the different things you ferment. It almost like begins to reveal its chemistry to you and what those different things are for. And then when your plants are at a certain stage of growing, then you start to eat certain foods because you're looking for a certain type of a plant nutrient. So it somehow is information. Terpenes must be information. You think about when you smell a flower, there's things are coming to your brain that I can't describe, but they tell you and your gut instinct like what to do next. So whether you take the smells from the raw plant or you take it from the terpene expression, you are collecting data constantly on how to move forward and make it happen better.
I'm speechless. That's so amazing. Like my head is just buzzing with that. That's just, what does that do to you? Because let's circle back to the title, which as the plants grow, so will the farmer. What is this information doing, and how has it grown you personally, and did you find it healing, and talk a little about that?
Yeah, the information I describe, I guess, would feel like a river. You know, like when you sit by your favorite place in the river, these
Mm.
streams of information that come to you. You can't wait to sit by the river again, and it becomes the only place where you find your peace. And everyone makes it to the river differently, but we all have that place where this stream of information comes to us, and that's really what why I keep going back to that river, and it keeps giving me things to bring back to people. And I don't charge people for hearing this, for sharing with them, because it wasn't charged. It didn't charge me anything, and I feel like it's almost like a exchange. The more it gives me, the more I give people. Then I come back to the river, and there's more again. But if I'm ever to hold it as like an intellectual property or as my business practice, that's all I'm ever going to get. And I need more than that to live. I just have to go to the river at least once a week, if you would, to like in real life too, just to sit by it physically and just watch and learn. And Native people have always done this, where we don't have the universities we have today, but we have nature. And nature really is the greatest teacher. And it affirms a lot of the things that we are already studying. And sometimes you'll find what you've studied that week be revealed to you simply by a bee going through a flower or an ant doing their work. That these lessons you cannot quite describe, but it edges you to do the next move that then gets you into the next place. And I feel like that's kind of how it's been for me as I've taken on work with the microbes. Is it's a continual journey that is up to me as to my level of involvement. And if I keep at it in the right intention, bringing the information back to people, share. The fact is, this information sometimes is right.
Oh.
But I'm sharing it with people the best that I know, so we can grow it and we can develop it and without having to feed. That's the way of the mycelium. That's the way the fungus connects and networks. So it's exciting to see that happening on the big scale and on the micro scale, because it's time.
It is time. You broke up just a little bit. I think the internet was a bit sketchy there, but yeah, so it sounds like it kind of opens your intuition working in this way. And I don't know, you're part of the cycles of life, and life is communicating with you and kind of guiding you. It's just so beautiful. And the whole, you try not putting it behind a paywall. That to me, I mean, you just embody really the permaculture spirit so beautifully. I could almost cry. It's just so beautiful.
Yes,
Really,
and
really.
that's this way. That's this life. And thank you for recognizing that. A lot of people, we don't do this for a recognition. We do it for a feeling. But when people see something like that, it shines hope to keep going. Because I feel every one person that recognizes it, there's 100 more that do. They think I'm weird with most of this stuff. But inside, they know it's the truth. And they help develop it the best that they can from where they're at. So it feels real good to see it open so many doors and meet so many people. But it's not like we're always just like one step ahead of destruction. It's not like it's a clear, smooth sailing once you choose this way. It's always, that thing is always right behind you that wants to turn it off. But we always has the ability to stay one step ahead to keep moving forward. But there's always that other side that wants to just say, go do something else now. You've done enough work here. Stop pushing so hard on this subject. But for me, as I said, this is where I sit by the stream, and I'll never stop going to the water.
That's so beautiful. And yeah, it just blows me away. It just blows me away. Ever since I found permaculture, and everyone in Matt's course has been so giving of the information, and it's just it's like cutting edge information that just needs to get out there to everyone, because there is hope. We can regenerate, and nature knows the way to do it. And if we just listen and open, you're guided. It sounds like they're communicating with you. And some people are animal communicators. Well, why aren't the microbes? You can be a microbe communicator, and I think you really are. And it's just beautiful. I can't thank you enough for sharing this. It's just so wonderful. So you've told us how we can start with bokashi, and I know you work with biochar as well. Could we talk a little bit about biochar?
Okay, well, biochar is a reference, and it describes wood matter that's been burned or pyrolyzed, burned at a certain temperature. And biochar describes this burnt wood, and we use it for agriculture because it has, if we looked at it under a microscope, the biochar is very porous, and it looks like honeycomb hives. There's holes everywhere, nooks and crannies inside the biochar, and this becomes a home for the microbes, long-term home. And when I first heard about biochar, and the guy described it as long-term homes, and I've been working with the microbes for so long, he couldn't get rid of me. And this was the Sonoma Biochar Initiative, written by Tar. And he was recently in a movie, Fire on Ice, with Leo DiCaprio, talking about biochar. But when he told me about a permanent home for these things, oh my goodness, I was so enthralled by what they can do. Not only was it a home, but he told me that the biochar holds water. And he told me the biochar is electrical. So if you think of like your home, water, electricity, this is a perfect place for microbes to dwell. And the fact that microbes can go in and out of the char in case conditions get bad, they can go back and hide until the water or food comes back, just made a lot of sense to me. Like I can really see where this is going to benefit my microbials. But then the biochar is, if you think of like how natives would burn a field and leave the ash and the charcoal behind, this type of regeneration is what kept the plains intact. And these in the Amazon, where I thought it was easy to grow stuff because of all the water, because of all the plant growth, there's just only a very thin layer of soil there. But what Cornell University did, they were looking back at the archives, and they were looking at the story of El Dorado, and they saw that during the archives that they were describing millions of people on the banks of the river, and they started thinking, like, how could they live there? There's no way to support the colonies there. They had went back and they started to dig around to these sites, and they noticed that the soil was different at these indigenous sites. And what they noticed was there was 10, 15, 20 feet of black earth, and they referred to that as terra preta. These black earth pits that were the feeding grounds basically for all the food production. Now, the carbon from these terra preta pits were the only way that you can grow food without all the nutrients washing out and grow it sustainably year after year after year after year. They were able to sustain large communities on the banks of these rivers. So when Cornell wanted to find out, well, kind of like when your computer's broken and you have to reset your computer to a date where it last works, that's where we're at with this world and in this time. Things are broken.
Yes.
So now they're going back to a time where they are looking to where it used to work, and they're trying to adapt some of these principles. Terra preta is one of those principles where it worked, and it worked sustainably, and it worked beautifully, and the people were well cared for. So Cornell wanted to know how this was done. So that's where biochar came back to the world. And when they went and they saw the carbon, they started to look at how they were producing the carbon. They realized that the only way to really build sustainable soil was to have a high carbon content. And this was really the foundation of long-term living soils if you were going to continue to farm them. Otherwise, it's a fly-by-night operation. You'll deplete the soil. So you have to have the right carbon content. Japan was right near their site in 1964 when they went over there. And Japan was really taking note as to how terra preta was developed. They went back and they developed bioceramics. And that's why I think Japan is ahead of us in the fire technology, because of their close look at the terra pretas that they were able to realize this is more than carbon. It has far infrared capacities. And they were looking at the processes, and then that's when they were able to mimic the processes for terra preta into the bioceramic and create these very strong far infrared vibrational ceramics that are just, for me, been the Pandora's box for microbial research.
Okay, so wow, there was a lot in there. So biochar, is it any biomass that's burnt, but you don't let the smoke escape? You don't, because that would be carbon going off. So
You got it.
you keep the the smoke in, and just like you make normal charcoal. But can you use any biomass?
Yes, any biomass, dry biomass, of course, is going to be better. And it's burning it in the depletion of oxygen. There are a couple styles in which we utilize called a conservation burn at Sonoma Biochar Initiative. And this allows burns to escape and create biochar for their...
You froze. You froze just for a minute. So the conservation burn, can you say a bit about that, how to do that? Because this is...
So conservation burn is when we usually pile up all of our ag waste into a big pile. We light the fires down at the bottom. As the fire gets going, smoke starts coming from the top. This is the way we were taught to make fires, from down at the bottom. But if you simply light that fire differently, make your pile like you're going to make it, nice dry pile, but light from the top. Make like a little nest at the top. And as that fire starts to burn at the top, it will release the volatile gases from the material below and start to feed into the flame front. The bigger the flame front gets, the more volatiles vibrate below to feed that thing. No smoke escapes from the flame. You now capture about 98% of those contaminants by being combusted in that flame front, that you get a nice clean burn all the way down. So as the fire grows higher on top, the materials are vibrating below and consuming the fire below. And once that fire gets all the way down and the material's white, that's when we extinguish the fire with some type of water and cool, or you can cover it with dirt. But we want to seize the burn and capture as much of the carbon as possible. And this is where the artisan side comes in. But the goal is to burn the fire and think of it like you're squeezing a sponge, getting all the volatiles out of that thing, and then extinguishing it so just the carbon remains. And that carbon skeleton is the home for the microbials that are going to do the regenerative work for your site.
Perfect. That's perfect, because it's kind of bonfire season where I am. So there'll be a lot of people lighting fires, and if they just did this conservation burn, it would help. So with the biochar, you're taking all this carbon, you're putting it back into the soil, so you're sequestering that carbon into the soil. But you've also said before that it contains a lot of information. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's encoded in this carbon?
Okay, carbon, as we know, is a way that we store information. If you think of computers and phones, we have the Silicon Valley, where it uses silica because it's able to hold a lot of information, but it's very expensive to, and quartz. Yeah, there we go. We got the quartz that's able to hold information. But if we look at how they manufacture the quartz, they take the carbon and then they erase the information and then load their stuff onto the quartz. Nature's been doing this forever. We didn't make this up. We copy nature. And if you think of a forest and a forest fire and what happens there, and we have, as we now look at this thing scientifically, we have microbes in the soil which are electron loving, that once they congregate big enough, they can literally make a lightning strike right to that area and make that fire happen right there. Now, do they do this at the peak of the growth season? Because it's almost, if I think about it, once the fire hits and begins to carbonize that whole forest, all the data about that forest is maintained forever in that carbon, just like with our silica. So that data is stored about every plant, every tree, what helped it grow, the weather conditions, the animals even. All that data, while it grew, was collected, then carbonized by the fire, and then when the new plants grow, you're able to tap into that, just like we tap into our phones when we need information. What's this? What's that? And they tap into the carbon and they begin to build the relationships that their parent tree or their grandparent tree had with that environment. So then they can regenerate even faster and make those partnerships even quicker, which means they're even stronger and means they have even a greater chance of survival. So they're tapping into a carbon source, just like we tap into our phones to get information about this product or this type of information. And it just allows them to do this. So I figure that since the microbes can do this, is it almost like the way we take a family photo of that particular moment so that they can, the new trees can see the existence of what it was like. So we never lose that position in time because it's locked into the carbon, and only greater growth can come from the next step if it's done in the right way. And, you know, if we can access that information, or the tree, if they can access that information, then the tree's next succession is going to be even better than the parent tree, even better than the grandparent tree, and make the same stage for their seedlings. And I feel like this is how the planet grows, because carbon is next to water, right? Carbon is like the main thing. These are the elements of what makes stuff happen. So carbon must be a building block of electrical information for things to build off of. The codes for building must come from that.
I got chills as you were talking. This is just like mind-blowing. And so, you know, people, you can charge crystals with your intention, right? So I'm in a course with Sandra Ingerman, and she has a mother crystal, and she charged our crystals. And yes, these are in our cell phones, you know, quartz. But then you saying that carbon is like the record keeper, and I'm just thinking that's why when you do a plantation of trees like for profit, that's not, you know, that's why an old growth forest is so valuable. It's got all this, the history, and everything's connected, and the microbes are there, and the fungi is there, and it's all connected. And it's like you say, there's this succession, and the next generation builds on the information from the previous generation and goes one better. This is just totally amazing. I'm wondering if, you know, any of this has come down from your lineage, like from your cultural heritage. Was this like passed down in your DNA, your excitement and your knowledge, and how you just came to it so easily?
Well, yeah, I mean, my mom didn't even own a pair of shoes till she was 10 years old. You know, she's from the hills of Puerto Rico. You know, Puerto Rico is the first contact people for Christopher Columbus. So basically, when things got bad, my family went up into the hills and been there ever since. So we've been living close to these ways, you know, much more so than other generations in the past who've been separated from the talk of the rivers and the talks of the trees. So, you know, it's easier for us to kind of make that jump, I guess, if you would. But at the same time, it's not absent from anybody. It's in your bloodline. Right. So many people have waited for this moment for you to join in, and just, it's there. It's in your bones. It's in your carbon. It's in everyone. So, you know, we're all part of that.
I love that. I love that. And so I know we're getting close to our time now, but I wanted to go back to bioceramics, because you were mentioning, so the Japanese have found a way to, I don't even know how to explain it. Can you tell us again about bioceramics and the far infrared aspect?
You just held up a crystal. Did you know there's microbials in that crystal? Have you ever looked at that yet?
No.
Look at the microbials in crystal. You'll be amazed to find out, like, what are you talking about? Microbes made crystal? When I think about this, and like, it's just more than carbon, I think of like maybe special microbes made us building for themselves, to encase themselves and partner, and became a catalyst. And these processes of encasing themselves in different crystallized forms is no different than the mitochondrial doing what it did in the cell. You know, it learned how to do this somehow. And there's patterns in which microbials encase themselves, where you begin to see them in all these different aspects, like you little boogers. You guys are little boogers. You've been doing this stuff. They are so smart. And if they want to be around a lifetime, they have to know how to build around themselves so they can cast out these informations through the world. And I believe that's really the magic of the crystals. It's some certain partnerships happened in there that said, let's build because we want to be here forever. And we want to teach people forever. Things may go bad, and let's use this carbon and make a shell for ourselves. So when we look at how these things did it with crystals, and all of it with so many different patterns of life, you begin to see like they are really communicating and want us to hear them. I'm just haven't been in the right channels or in the right space, and that's by design. It's no fault of your own. The distractions that the world's put on us is all by design. And now it's kind of time for us to do what I call canopy work on the plants and prune the branches we don't need no more and focus on the fruiting branches so that we can move into the next step. And I think that's what I'm learning from these things is they don't only just build themselves in all these other forms within us as well. And we are antennas for them, and we can get ourselves in the right position to work and share that information.
That is fantastic. Oh my goodness. So I know you need to go soon and I want to honor your time, but about the bioceramics, just quickly, can we get a hold of these, and how does that work with the vibration and all of that? Can you quickly tell us about that again?
So Dr. Higa took the quartz silica, fired it at 2,000 degrees. Dr. Higa is the maker of the bioceramic. At 2,000 degrees, it seems to erase the memory of the quartz crystal. And then at that point, when it's completely erased like a blank tape, they cool it with the effective microbes, the EM. And the carbon records the first thing it's in contact with and cools it down. It seems to record a type of a flux that then is able to expel different electromagnetic frequencies. And the bioceramics from Dr. Higa are between a 7 and 12 micron range, just about the range of your body. So these far infrared waves are very compatible with your body. And far infrared has its own information exchange capacity when we begin to look at these wavelengths and how maybe that's the intercellular communication wavelength. You know, I'm not a physicist, I don't know, but I'm looking at it every day. But these are the things where we're trying to figure out, like, is this far infrared the in-between between species that helps us communicate without words? We don't know, but I know that the microbes are creating this within the silica that when, for me, when he poured 2 glasses of wine. This is the best thing to do. You pour 2 glasses of red wine that's bitter and doesn't taste good. And you take some of that bioceramic and you hold it next to 1 glass. And you wait about 45 seconds. And then you can taste that glass and then taste the control. The waves, when they hit the molecules, get the poles to spin so fast. In physics, we call this spin, that they break bond from each other and the tannins move up and the fruits separate, that it kind of mimics aging. And the wines become so smooth. With bitter tannins and things like that, you cannot miss it. It works with coffees because coffees can be bitter. But with the wine, when I tried it with the wine, I was living in Napa at the time. This thing had just blew our mind in the Napa industry because something we could not see had an effect on a physical product that either people were, this is great, tell me more about it, or they were like, never come here again. Take that out of here because I know enough and I don't need to learn anything else. So it's a 50-50 split on this thing, but there is something that happens at the electromagnetic frequency related to regeneration and in physics spin that must be the precursor to mitosis, which is cellular division, that then, it acts as a cellular division and almost as an antioxidant as well by lending electrons and stopping oxidation, that you have this whole new thing happening with far infrared in the medical field, that it's a real thing, and they're looking at this thing now with different eyes. And the fact we can create it without electricity is you can see that these electron living microbes are still alive in there and doing their thing. Yeah.
There are so many possibilities and applications. So Dr. Higa wrote a book what was it? Earth Saving Revolution? Is
That's
that the
it.
name? Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'll put that link with the video. I'll also
Great.
put a link to the YouTube video that I mentioned at the beginning so people can watch that. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you wanted to share today?
Don't feel lost in this thing. As I said, start small.
Okay.
Start with your own garbage bin.
Perfect.
And then you'll begin to realize what a powerful role you have in this, and what a much needed member you are in rejuvenation. And we need each other,
Mm.
and that's the time that it is. We need each other, and working together is what feels good.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And we can all close that loop and start to regenerate. That's just beautiful. So, how can people stay in touch with you if they want to go deeper
Okay,
or
so
learn more?
I'm always posting on Instagram at Bokashi for you.
Okay.
You can look me up on Facebook. I post on Facebook. But Sonoma Biochar Initiative is what we're doing a lot of the biochar work and moving around to different parts of the country teaching about biochar. So look into Sonoma Biochar Initiative. You'll find out where we're going to be, what we're doing, where our workshops are.
Okay, great.
And then Matt Powers' course. Matt Powers, the advanced permaculture student. You want to learn more? And that's the place for it. He's captured all of the people doing real regenerative work in their field. And he somehow got us to just, like he said, we all open up to Matt. Matt is such a loving person that he got us to really just, this was the thing. We all knew it was the thing to do. And I think it showed in that collection of work. So let's keep that going.
Yes, I highly recommend it. I'm still in there myself. And thank you so much, Cuauhtemoc. It has just been fascinating, mind blowing. And I just thank you so much for sharing and giving of your time. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank everybody for attending the conference. And let's keep doing regeneration work. Good day.
Absolutely.